The electric decade. What is it? Why the urgency? What does it take? If we're serious about climate change and the net zero ambition, then no doubt we must electrify massively. And we must do it now, during this decade. By 2030, 80% of all EU electricity will already be decarbonized, making it a fuel of choice against climate change. And beyond that, beyond climate, switching major segments of the economy from fossils to clean electricity will create jobs, reduce air pollution, and cut spending in imported gas and oil. But clearly, again, the urgency is on. We need to act now, during this decade. By 2030, 35% of the economy must have shifted to electricity versus barely more than 20% today. And seeing the trend until now, this means a complete change of gear. Your Electric Power Summit next week will bring this urge on the agenda. We'll talk about several levers for the electric decade, including customers, collaborations, and the speed of change. This is also what I would like to discuss today with Peter Hinssen, multi-entrepreneur and expert in radical innovation, also author of several books, including The Phoenix and the Unicorn. And with Stephen van Belleghem, thought leader in customer experience, author of bestseller book, including The Offer You Can't Refuse. Thank you both for your presence, gentlemen. Starting with you, Stephen, and with customer experience, in your book, you stress how much customers are now aware and interested in combating climate change. You warn, however, that they won't buy climate-friendly products if the offers don't first bring them a personal benefit. Could I ask you to take the floor for a couple of minutes and introduce us to this question?
Thank you, Gail, for the warm introduction and for the invitation to be part of your seminar here today. Let's talk about the evolution of customer experience, because the expectations of customers towards any industry, and especially the utility industry, are changing rapidly. In the old world, it was simple. The only thing you need to have was a good product at a good price and good service. That was it. That was the only thing you needed to be successful. But today, that is changing. The minimum demand, the bar just went up. Customers expect more. Digital convenience has become part of what people find natural. And of course, this has been accelerated because of what happened in the past 15 months. We have seen the big digital jump forward. And in my opinion, 2020 was the biggest digital training course in human history. It almost felt like we stepped into some sort of a time machine. If you look at the research that McKinsey recently did, they actually calculated that the jump forward, the digital acceleration that we had, was a jump of 7 years ahead in the future. And it's crazy to see how fast our behavior and our habits changed. It's almost overnight that it happened. And as a consequence, today, the market feels that digital convenience is a commodity. If you have it, people think it's the most natural thing in the world. If you don't have it, you're in deep trouble. Today, there's some sort of a zero tolerance for digital inconvenience. Just look at yourself. How many chances do you give a new app that you install on your phone? Usually the answer to that question is 1 or 2. And then if you think about how long that one chance lasts, usually we express that in seconds rather than in minutes. So there's a zero tolerance for digital inconvenience. So if you want to attract new clients, the effort that they want to invest to become a client of your organization is close to zero. This is the new minimum. This is what people expect and what people find normal. So the question is, how can you differentiate yourself? How can you win customers in the next decade? And of course, as Gael said, the challenge is on the climate level. But before that, we need to bring value to customers. And I like to play with this idea of having a partner in life, of becoming a partner in life for your customers. This is about understanding the human behind the customer. People don't just want to buy your product. They want you to have a positive change in their life. Here, it's not about making the customer journey as easy as possible anymore. Here, it's about adding value every single day in the life of customers. If you would be in the car industry, it's not about selling cars, it's about offering mobility. It's about understanding what people need and bringing that to them every moment that it brings value for them. Partner in life. And then you have the top of the model, changing the world, having an impact on society. Because today, what we feel in the market is that more and more customers, they look for companies who want to take their responsibility. Because let's face reality, there's a lot on our plate today. We have a lot of challenges. There's still a big fight against racism and discrimination. We have a climate issue that has become more urgent than ever before. We're facing the biggest healthcare crisis of our generation, with a huge impact on individuals and businesses. So there's a lot on our plate. And the market expects organizations to make a difference. And of course, if I look to the utility industry, you guys have the potential to change the world. If you do, and if you succeed in the ambitions that Gael just mentioned, you are changing the world. But if you look at it at an individual level, from the point of view of an individual organization, also ask yourself the question, can we change our world? Maybe it's too high up to change the world, but every single one of you can change their world. You can change your world. You can use the strengths of your organization to have an impact on the community that you serve. And then you have 4 layers, 4 components that bring value to the modern customer. And each one of them helps you to convince the customer to become part of the journey that you're in. And of course, if you think about how this works and how it evolves, I want to answer the question that Gael asked me in the introduction. Changing the world, just investing all you have in sustainability and climate change will not be enough. If you want to convince customers, this model starts from the bottom and it works its way up. People look at their benefit, their personal benefit first, and then it grows to the society, and then it grows to challenges of the world. So it's the combination of all these components that will bring the value that customers are looking for. And if you manage to bring those different components in one experience, in one storyline to the customer, then you have an offer they cannot refuse. So this is the short pitch I prepared for you guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and let's see if you have any questions about all this.
Thank you so much, Steven, for this great presentation. We all saw your arrow pointing up, so from customer convenience to possibly an improvement in climate change. So clearly, you're telling us that this digitalization, this technology, is becoming at the heart of value proposition and great customer experience. Do you see companies use these assets of technology and data to convince customers with a valuable energy offering?
Absolutely. And the funny thing is, I've seen examples from companies who are actually doing that are non-utility companies. Like, I've seen 2 examples in the Netherlands. One is coming from Coolblue. They're one of the more popular e-commerce players in the Netherlands. They started with an energy offering. So typically they sell TVs and computers and laundry machines and those kind of things. Now they start with an energy offering for their customers. And it's a very interesting philosophy, because imagine that I become a customer. Then they're going to gather data about, how much energy I use in my house, and they're going to use that data to recommend me which other products I should replace. So for instance, they're going to compare my level of usage with my neighbor, and they're going to say, hey, there's something wrong in your house. We're going to check which refrigerator you have. And then they're going to say, oh my God, it's way too old. If you buy a new refrigerator from us, then your energy bill will decrease. So they're going to use the energy product basically to deliver a more personalized service offering to their clients. And I love this because they're enhancing their knowledge about the customer, but they're also becoming that partner in life that understands what you need to have benefits on other areas. So that's one example that I really like. Another one is maybe even crazier. It comes from Centraal Beheer, which is one of the largest insurance companies in the Netherlands. It's a company that is more than 100 years old. It's part of the large group, Agmea. And these guys, they want to be a partner in sustainable living. So you have an insurance company, they want to become a partner in sustainable living. And they want to add services on top of the insurances to help their customers in that challenge. And one of the things that they offer are solar panels. So now you can go to the website of this insurance company and you can get solar panels. Why do they do this? Because they know that many of their clients want to have solar panels, but they know that many of them are also worried. They don't know which supplier to trust. And these guys, this insurance company, had 5,000 claims of unhappy people about suppliers of solar panels. So thanks to their data, they perfectly know who the good and the bad players in the market are. And now they use that data to offer this new service to their customers. And it's done in an Amazon kind of way. You go to their website, you type in your address, they instantly scan your roof with Google technology. They will calculate how many solar panels you can have. They will calculate the price. And then in the week after that, they install it on your rooftop. So I thought this is fantastic to see how non-energy companies actually use this market to deliver additional services to their clients and use the data that they have to do that in a personalized and very convenient way.
Great examples of the complete disruption that you are experts of, and great examples of also the collaborations that are needed. You need to step in and collaborate with others. We'll come back to that a bit later in the discussion. But so we put the focus on this data and on this technology question, and yet I hear a lot of people, I hear a lot of customers say, you know what, Stephen, I worry about my data privacy. How do we juggle that as a company? We need to go there, and we see customers have some concerns about it.
Yeah, very good point. I see a number of phases ahead of us. Today, we're in the trade-off phase. Today, as a customer, you, me, Peter, all of us, every day we have to choose between privacy or convenience, right? It's a trade-off. And the truth is, all three of us, and most people who are watching this, we choose for convenience every day. But we're worried about our privacy. So we're going to have an evolution that in a few years from now, there's probably going to we're going to arrive in a phase of data ownership, where the customer can make the decision, will I share my data with this company, yes or no? And we have to be ready for that point. And just ask yourself, to which company would you give access to your data? And the answer is very simple, that company that gives you a lot of value today. So if you want to make sure that you don't end up in a world where you don't have access to that data anymore and where you're going to have to decrease your service levels, you need to go all in on maximizing value of customers. And today I see many companies that don't do that. I see companies that, bow towards what can we do within the GDPR legislation, how far can we go? And they look for the gray zone. And usually when you end up in the gray zone, the value for the company is higher than the value for the customer. Companies that work like that today won't have access to customers anymore in the future. So you have to go to the green zone where you can do whatever you can. And if you bring enough value to the customer, it's always something that is allowed to do by legislation.
So it's quite urgent, again, that the companies do this evolution now, because you say later others will have taken the train faster, and it will be difficult for them to jump on it.
That's the problem. Many companies just wait until legislation changes or until behavior changes, and then they're surprised. But you can always prepare for that. Everyone knows that there will be a day when we decide what happens with our own data. We don't know when that moment will be, but it will arrive in the next 10 years. Your decisions today define your success when that moment happens.
Another element of urgency beyond the climate urgency, this data urgency you're bringing to the table quite clearly. I wanted to ask also, again, thinking of those customers I talk to or people I know in my circles, how do we get their trust? So you say the value proposition is a big element, but who is the best to sort of reassure customers? Are utilities for you trustworthy partners? Do you think that the tech giants are better placed? Do you think we need the people from the street, maybe some people who become sort of energy influencers, maybe a new job for the future. Who is capable of bringing this trust element?
Oh, I think that every type of organization can deliver trust. Tech giants can do that, incumbents can do that, influencers can do that, as long as you're transparent and as long as you bring value to the table. But to turn the question around, you need to ask yourself, what is value for customers today? And to understand that, I look to the scarce resources that customers have. And customers have three scarce resources: time, money, and energy. And I don't mean energy, to turn on the light, but personal energy, right? Those are scarce resources. Most people that I meet would like to have more of those. There are not that many people who have enough of all three: time, money, energy. And if you figure out a way how you can save time of people or enhance their time, if you figure out a way how you can save money for people, if you figure out a way how you can give energy to people, personal energy, then you bring value to the table. And in my opinion, any kind of organization can do that, but you have to look at it from that customer point of view. And starting with their scarce resources is for me, a very interesting way of defining value for customers. And once you define value and you communicate in a transparent way about that, and you're consistent in your behavior, at that moment you will gain trust.
I'm interested in your view, and that question will go to both of you gentlemen, about how you apply this specifically to our sector and to the utilities. What do you think, how do you judge utilities at the time with their interactions and relations to customers? I'd be interested to hear your views about this in particular. Maybe you first, Peter.
Yeah, and I love the example that Stephen gave of Coolblue. I mean, I'm a big Coolblue customer. I love their service. I mean, they're like a local version of Amazon, but specifically focused on everything dealing with electronics. And I've been a loyal customer for a long time, and I really love their customer service and their customer experience. And if they would be able to give me an energy offering and really give me insights, I would probably go for that, or at least I would try it out. And I think that is probably because I see them as a credible partner. I feel that trusting, sense of environment where, as a customer, I feel valued. And I think they're probably capable of doing something relevant with data. If I look at my utility company, I have a very neutral connection to my utility company. I mean, honestly, it's been so that I even haven't taken the time to find out if I could switch and save money, because that is not even the most important thing. But I don't have that personal relationship. I don't have that trusting relationship with the utility. And I think this is where the dangers are. I think utilities that can do it will accelerate. Utilities that see the opportunity will take advantage of that, and I think can really thrive in the next electric decade. But utilities who keep, basically inside their swimming lane and just think that this is all going to blow over, I think are probably in for a rude awakening, and that's exactly what I'll talk about later.
I see that some of our utilities are doing that, maybe not yours directly, and probably there is some growth still in our sector. I come to you in a second, Stephen, but if I take, for example, the situation with EDF, they've partnered up with a startup company, Nuve. I don't think a lot of people know them necessarily. They've established a V2G solution. Basically, you're a customer, you don't need your electric vehicle for a while, you park it there, and you get remunerated for the time that you store the electricity. Because, of course, it's convenient for the system to be able so quickly afterwards to bring this electricity back. So you get a remuneration. Now, you need your car immediately. They offer you a fast charging solution. I see also Energy Up. They offer some green solution. That's a product from Engie. They offer some green electricity, but they also help you repair your heating, repair your electric appliances at home, or control your water and energy consumption. Is that the kind of offers that ticks the box of all you're saying? Data, so convenience, clear offering for the person in their personal needs, do you think, Stephen?
I think those are wonderful examples, because Traditionally, if you talk with someone from the utility industry, they would say, oh, we're a commodity business. And we both recently had the pleasure to speak to Seth Godin. And we talked about the commodity business. And I will never forget his answer. He said, a commodity is a mindset. Being average is a choice. So you can decide to be a commodity, but you don't have to. In every industry, there are ways to bring services to customers that add value to their life, that go beyond just the basic product. And I think that's where the challenge is for the energy industry. Of course, they're going to focus on being green. I have no doubt about that. Of course, they have a product that is working as it should. Digital convenience, okay, I assume that they're growing in that. But I think where they will be able to differentiate is in that partner in life philosophy. It's like Peter explained of Coolblue. The way that he described it is like, okay, when Coolblue brings me an energy offering, they're going to help me with other things that I value, so they become a partner in life. If you look at the big evolution in mobility, a few of the examples that you mentioned are in that field. Yeah, there's so many challenges that all of us have day to day with mobility. How can my energy partner help me with that? It's those kind of questions they will need to ask. So I think the differentiating part, if I link it back to my model, will be in the partner in life box. And if they forget that one and only invest in the green part and only invest in the product, it will not be enough to win.
Gentlemen, I think that was extremely clear. We understood the arrow going up, customer convenience first, and then the possibility to embark the customer into the climate change combat. Thank you so much for your views on this point. Now, I heard a person say focusing on customers is not enough, and that person is you, Peter. You say that companies must transform on all sides to succeed. Of course, on the customer side, they need to improve, but they also need another side. They need to focus on partnerships, they need to change the culture, they need to work on their HR, they need to have a strategy. Peter, could I turn to you and ask you to take the floor for a couple of minutes to also introduce us to this general philosophy of business evolution?
Wonderful. Good luck. So let me start with this image. Maybe you recognize it, maybe you don't, but this is actually an image from one of my favorite movies in the world. It's a movie called Awakenings, and it's a wonderful movie starring the late Robin Williams and Robert De Niro. And it's quite a strange story. It talks about patients who've actually been in a comatose, lethargic situation for a very long time, and suddenly they wake up because of a new killer drug called L-Dopa. And you can say, what does that have to do with the utility sector? But I think maybe there is an awakening moment that is about to happen. This is a sector that has been relatively dormant for a long time, and all of a sudden, you guys are in the middle of one of the biggest storms you can imagine. I truly believe that sense of urgency and the importance of the electric decade. I think it will be wrong to say, okay, what is the biggest challenge we've had in the last 15 months? That has been trying to figure out if we can still survive in that new normal where all of a sudden digital became so important. I think we have to go beyond that. And that's why I think this sector is at what I call a red pill, blue pill moment. I'm sure that some of you get excited about these new opportunities and say, what's the new normal? What's the next new normal? But I'm sure that some of you think, well, I kind of miss the old normal, and I wish we could go back to that. I don't believe that what we just experienced, one of the biggest changes we've seen in our lifetime, was actually the end state. I don't think this was just a storm in a teacup. I honestly believe we're bracing ourselves for more fundamental change and faster than ever before. Look at the big concern we had before the pandemic. It was the environment, it was the ecology. That isn't going to die down. That is going to accelerate and come back with a vengeance. And that's exactly what I started calling the never normal. A world where all sorts of shocks to the system, whether it's technological, biological, whether it's geopolitical, or it's climate, are going to affect us. It's a world of constant change where little things can have huge global effects, and we have to learn how to be agile and how to live in that never normal world. And I get excited by this, but it's also something that I think in this sector is going to hit hard. Recently, we saw a wonderful example of a never normal type of scenario, Texas freezing over, and a complete collapse of the power grid as a result. It's fascinating to see that that relationship between ecology and, in this case, technology was at a complete meltdown. But I think what we have to do is not fear these types of never normal situations, but actually learn how to appreciate them and be prepared. I think what we need to do is prepare for, and I make an analogy here, one of my favorite quotes from Hemingway is when he went bankrupt, and yes, Ernest Hemingway went bankrupt, a journalist asked him, Mr. Hemingway, how did you go bankrupt? And his answer is fantastic in two ways, gradually and then suddenly. These types of never normal, gradually, things that happen very slowly and boom, they're there. That's what we have to deal with. It's going to be a roller coaster ride, and certainly in this industry. And that's why I think there might be indeed a reset moment where I think a utility is going to have to completely reinvent itself. And if you look at the numbers aren't good. I mean, rising CO2, we have to address that. And at the same time, the way that we think about energy is still incredibly slow to change. This is going to be indeed the electric decade. And this is going to be a global phenomenon where we have to figure out what that future is going to be. This might be one of my favorite images of René Magritte, the famous Belgian surrealist painter. And it is incredibly difficult to interpret that egg and figure out what that day after tomorrow bird is going to look like. So what does it mean? And I think we need to go beyond just the customers. But the question is, are we ready for such an awakening? I find it fascinating when I look at utility, and we had the conversation just now, often when you hear the word utility, people really associate that with just a commodity. And I agree with Stephen. I mean, customers are extremely valuable, and we have to give them something that is more than just a commodity. But what is the relationship that most utilities have had with their customers? I mean, for the last decades, it was a billing relationship, and we need to go way beyond that. So if this sector really is ready for a red pill, blue pill moment, I mean, let me make the analogy with the automotive sector. We don't know if Apple is going to build a car, but the rumors have been there for a long time. But it is very clear that the world of mobility is fundamentally going to change in the next 10 years. And I loved this interview with the CEO of Peugeot a while ago. The CEO of Peugeot was interviewed by the Financial Times, and he was asked, would you want to work with companies like Apple if they're going to build a car? And he said, yes, absolutely, because the disruption is not going to come from the traditional manufacturers of automobiles. It's going to come from those new players out there. But he said, we'd be more than willing to actually work with them. But, he said in the interview, only if we can actually sustain the relationship with the customer. Now, I would love to see that. I would love to see the CEO of Peugeot fly to Cupertino for a meeting with the CEO of Apple and say, Mr. Cook, I want to work on your car, but only if we, Peugeot, have the interface with the customer. I think that would be a rude awakening. We don't live in the digital age. We live in the age of networks. We live in a hyper-connected world. And business as usual means that it's not just about thinking about digital as the new normal. It's about a world of partnerships and platforms and ecosystems. And that might be the biggest change we have to do. You can't do everything on your own anymore. This is the age of networks. But utilities often still think very much in silos. And I think that transition from a traditional structure into the age of networks is going to be a big one. Look at, for example, the rise of platforms. Platforms seem to be eating the world when it comes to the future. But a utility will have to figure out what is their role. Are they Batman or Robin? Are they a platform or a supplier to the platforms? This is going to be something we see in many, many sectors. I take one example. Look at finance. With new digital currencies all of a sudden appearing onto the scene, we see that, for example, central banks, which have been dormant for a long time, all of a sudden become red hot and can actually really awaken and transform what they do. That transformation, that awakening, is not just something that happens on the outside world, it's something that happens inside as well. We have to reimagine our instruments. And many utilities that I've seen are just not prepared. They still work in very classical patterns. I love this resistance to new ideas. It's a function of the number of employees to the power of the number of managers. And what you see is that many utilities are still very traditional. I mean, they have figured out how to be robust, how to deal with some of these never normal changes. But what they need to do is figure out how to be resilient, how to bounce forward, how to take advantage of that. And that will be the biggest change. It's going to be almost a phase change in the utility sector and a true reset. There's three components to that: skills, minds, and hearts. Skills, we are living in a world where the skills we need to deal with that never normal, with that changing customer, with that ecosystem is going to be changing dramatically. It's the age of networks, of information, of intelligence and automation. But skills is only part of it. The most important thing we probably need to do is reinvent the utility industry and fill it with people with a different mindset that don't see the customer as just a billing relationship. But how do we reinvent utilities where people are going to be passionately curious to think about the day after tomorrow, where they're endlessly open-minded to think about the never normal, where they're forcefully resilient and, I think, vigorously creative to reinvent this industry? If we want this to be the electric decade, then I think we really need to focus on that clairvoyance. But the most important thing is that we have an incredibly important role to play. The heart set, the engagement, the challenges out there are very, very real. If we want to be the generation that really focuses on making change happen, it's not just the individual, it's the collective. It's doing that together. I get really excited by that, and I love this quote from Maya Angelou: you can't use up creativity. The more you use, the more you have. I think we have to be ready for this awakening, and I certainly hope it won't be a rude awakening.
Thank you so much, Peter. That was a fascinating awakening to how a business can evolve. I would want to ask the first question to you, actually, Steven.
Okay.
What do you think of what Peter just told us?
Well,
now I'm curious.
Yeah, well, I have some feedback.
Do you agree to his recipe for success?
No, I loved Peter's presentation, and I'm a huge fan of the idea of a skill set, mindset, heart set. Because we work with a lot of organizations, and my feeling is that most organizations only focus on the skill set part. They think, oh, if we invest in some technical skills and we get some data guys on board, we're ready for the future. And probably, in my opinion, if I see those three, the skill set is probably the easy part. Mindset is a difficult one. How can you convince an entire organization of a new journey? And heart set, I think it's important towards the market, but it's also important towards your team. I mean, if you want to attract the right talent, if you want to succeed in the skill set, you need the right heart set. Because many people, they don't just want to work for a company that talks about how much revenue they make. They want to work for a company that actually goes on this journey and makes a difference. And the younger the talent is, the more important the heart set will be. So I love these three because, and for me, they're all three as important. And I hope that opened up some minds of some of the people who are watching. Don't just focus on the technical part of the challenge. So I love this story.
You agree, this is wonderful. So an HR challenge, a cultural challenge. I hear you also talk about this silo thinking and acting of possibly some companies, including, you said, of utilities, and the need to evolve towards platforms. So what do we do, and how do you judge the potential that these collaborations can bring to the utilities sector, working together with tech giants, working together with manufacturers, data providers? What potential does that bring to our sector?
I think there's great potential there, and I think it's going to be a very interesting opportunity, but also quite a big challenge. And it really goes back to that idea of the swimming lanes. I mean, for a long time, I think the utility sector really said, this is our lane. This is what we focus on. I mean, we provide these types of services to our products. But at the same time, what you now have is people outside of your swimming lane that are thinking, hey, that's an interesting opportunity because we can actually do something there. And I don't see the utility sector often looking outside of their swimming lane. I think this is going to be a world where linear really is out. It's going to be much more a non-linear type of approach, much more a network-based thinking. And this is not easy because traditionally, if you've always focused on your lane, how do you actually do that? So the easy way would be to say, we're going to do some partnerships. Now, partnerships are wonderful because I think this is the age of ecosystems. This is the age of thinking about, helping each other out in the network. But the big question comes when I talked about in my presentation, what is your role? Are you Batman or Robin? I mean, are you actually the one who has that real relationship with the customer? Or are you the one who is just a supplier and somebody else really has that intimate relationship and makes that offer you can't refuse? And I think this is going to be something where I honestly don't think in many markets you're going to have a new kid on the block that will eat your lunch. I mean, this is not a market where, for example, in retail, you're going to have unicorns that all of a sudden just come up and just destroy everything. But I do think this is an opportunity for those utilities who can actually advance and take advantage of that to become stronger. So I think there's a lot of potential for phoenixes in this market, in this industry. And I think it's going to be where if one utility understands that it's about reaching out, building partnerships, working with the outside world, thinking as a network, I think they're probably going to build that relationship with the customer, build that offer you can't refuse, and I think are probably going to accelerate and show that they are really capable for that never normal. The ones that don't are probably going to fall behind.
This is music to my ears because this is exactly what we as Eurelectric believe in. Eurelectric has decided for now quite some time to embark into those partnering with other actors. We talk and we have as members not only utilities, but we have tech giants, we have Google, Microsoft, we have IBM, we have data providers with us, we have different other actors, and really we work together to think collectively and develop some more customer-oriented but also innovative solutions. We're talking together about the way to accelerate electrification in sectors we didn't necessarily think of. How do you electrify a port, for example? That can be a great development. And we see also our utilities doing that clearly. We see, for example, if I take the example of E.ON and Microsoft, they have decided together to define a solution that combines the data of several of your electric appliances at home and in a single platform that can regularly learn through AI and IoT, anticipate about when you will come back home and when you will want the temperature to be set at 21 degrees, let's say, for example, gentlemen. This partnership is clearly bringing a plus for our customers. We see it happening on the ground. We see it happening also, and that's maybe more upstream, with a partnership between Ørsted and Microsoft, where through AI technology of Microsoft, we're able to collect the data from thousands of windmills, and we can then anticipate the maintenance, maybe less directly for customers, but still, this is bringing clearly a plus. So I wanted to ask you, you say collaborations is probably an essential part of the journey. You even say maybe go further than the partnership, maybe enter yourself as a utility into the market of a tech giant. Is that what you're saying, that this innovation can be also stepping into the business of utilities and data provider?
Well, it's an open question, but I think there's certainly the opportunity there. I mean, I think we probably, as I said, often associate utility with a commodity. And that means that the relationship you have with your customer hasn't been super exciting, maybe. But everything you just described is super exciting. I mean, this is something where you can really build something that is going to improve people's lives, that is at the same time going to make our planet a better planet. And I think this is where I think the opportunity is clearly there. But it means that the utility has to dare to step up to the plate. I mean, for a tech giant, it was quite normal to work with data and figure out how to be relevant. But for utility, that question between essential and relevance, that is going to come full center in this electric decade. I mean, you know what it is. I mean, what you provide as utility is essential because I want the heating to be on in my house. I want my car to actually be charged when I leave for work in the morning. But at the same time, you're going to have to figure out how to become more relevant going forward. And I believe that those utilities who can focus on that are going to thrive. Now, mind you, I mean, when you talk about partnerships, collaborations, platforms, that's all in the outside world. But I don't believe that a utility is going to be able to do that if they don't actually internalize some of that network thinking as well. And I think this might be even the biggest challenge out there. I mean, working with startups, easy. Working with the tech giants, you'll figure it out. But how do you change the organizational fabric of a utility, which for a long time has been doing the same? And how do we make them awake to actually think about the network opportunities? I did some work over the last couple of years with Stanley McChrystal, who is one of my heroes. He was the commanding officer of the U.S. Armed Forces in Afghanistan. He went there with his classical structure approach, and it was a colossal failure in the beginning. And the reason is he started to realize that he was using a structure to fight an enemy that was no longer a structure, but actually was pumping around information faster than he could. And he had to change his organization into a network in order to be successful in the battlefield. And I think, honestly, this is what's going to happen in utility as well. It's no longer about silos, it's about networks. The outside world becomes more of a network, but if utilities still use the very classical structures to actually combat that, I think it's maybe a recipe for disaster. And that is a big, big change, because it's something, as Stephen said, it's easy to hire AI and data scientists. It's easy to work with a tech giant and think about opportunities of artificial intelligence. But internalizing that and really changing that fabric, the way that we organize, that might be one of the biggest challenges for utilities out there.
So certainly still challenges ahead. And the last topic I wanted to discuss, which is another challenge, is clearly the speed. We're talking about an evolution in this decade. We repeat it, it's the electric decade. So how do you see, from your experience, that companies have managed a very fast evolution when, as you say, there are some cultural changes to foresee, where there can be some vested interests? Do you have experience and do you have examples to provide?
Stephen, you want to go first?
Sure. You know, one of the main challenges for me is for the senior leadership to define the vision more ambitious and more clear. I've seen too many purposes that are the average of the average. And because of that, the employees don't have a clue what the actual purpose is, let alone customers. So I think you need to be more bold there. Because if you don't have that bold vision, why would you speed up? If you don't have that urgency, why would you speed up? So you need to be more bold and don't become average. That's number one. But then one of the problems is that management gets excited about the new purpose and they hire us and we give a talk and they present the new purpose and they say, this is what we're going to do. And then they all go back to work and 75% of the people is like, whatever. Good luck, guys, in your journey. So the second step is to make sure that every single individual in the organization perfectly knows how they can contribute to achieving that goal, that dream. And when you succeed in that every individual knows, okay, this is my role, this is my contribution, this is what they expect from me on a very detailed level, then you can create excitement. But most of the time, it's average, and it's fluffy for the organization what they need to do at the same time. And then you will never create change, you will never create speed because people are not involved and they don't know what to do. So in my opinion, the biggest responsibility there is for the senior management team.
And in our sector, clearly, the sense of urgency is completely understood by the management. I can tell you, all the CEOs that come to Eurelectric clearly have this vision that we need to accelerate, and we are accelerating the decarbonization, that we need to embark the customers through electric solutions, because, again, we can bring a solution that is carbon neutral for mobility and for heating. So this sense of urgency, I can tell you, I can testify, does exist. And clearly we have a vision, full decarbonization by 2045. This is something we're marching to, and we're marching to very fast. By 2030, we will be more than 80% decarbonized. And all our colleagues are fully aware that this is the challenge, and that this challenge means a business opportunity and a potential to connect with customers. So I think this path, this vision is clearly there for most of us.
If I can just challenge that a little
Sure.
bit, I fully believe you, but if everyone has the same vision, then it's not differentiating. So I see that's the overall goal of the industry. The challenge for the people in the individual organizations is also to translate that and what it means for them specifically to do it in a way that is different than the others. Otherwise, it's just an industry trend, and that's fine, but you need to create that urgency and your own proud inside as well, is my feeling.
So company-specific trajectory and vision is what you're saying. I would want to show maybe a slide that I had prepared, if that's possible, to show about this evolution and the speed that we're talking about. Look at this. 10 years ago, in 2010, some of our utilities, which you see there, Enel and Iberdrola, had a market capitalization that was relatively weak in comparison to the big oil, the Shell, the Exxons, the BP. And look, today, 2020, of course, there's been a difficulty on the side of the big oil, but you can say that the growth of those companies is there. So is that not also something that brings this motivation and this drive, this cultural change? When you see that your company is moving so fast, you believe in what the management has provided as a trajectory, no?
I agree, and I think that's part of the engagement. That's part of feeling that heart set, that you're part of something which makes a difference. But I think the sense of urgency is something that I find fascinating in the sense that when I talk about the suddenly and gradually, we've been talking about this for a long time, and all of a sudden it is going to escalate. And you have to be prepared for that as a utility. You need to make sure that you are prepared for when that escalation is going to happen. And the timing is now. And I think we've seen that in many sectors before. Look at, for example, finance, where we talked about how it would gradually start to change. And then all of a sudden, why do we still use cash? We're all going to do that in an electronic way. We've seen the same thing in the telecom sector. And I think when you see those things that are, talked about, slow to change, and then all of a sudden they're there, I think this means that the companies who are prepared, who have that mindset, who have started to really function in a different way, they are going to capitalize on that. And I think they will make the difference in the electric decade.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. I think it was fascinating to talk to both of you. You are the experts, again, in complete disruption of the business. We see that this is the time of the electric decade. I think you all agreed to this, and that a lot of good signs are already there. Now it's time we get and we deliver. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for inviting us.
Thanks for
Thank you very
having us.
much. Good luck.